If you know anything about the internet, the majority of it just isn't good. One of the worst places is Twitter, what I'd like to call a wretched hive of scum and villainy. With Twitter, bad takes are plentiful. So, who is the worst Twitter user? With the most and worst bad takes, as well as just heaps of stupidity? Well, that would be MovieBob. Now, before I get into Bob, let me just give a brief little apology on why this video took so long to come out. Researching Bob has taken a long time, and this is because Bob's story, as well as Bob himself, is all fat and very little substance, so making a coherent narrative has been a difficult task. MovieBob has been on the internet for over 15 years at this point, working for multiple different companies such as Screw Attack and The Escapist, as well as uploading videos on YouTube. MovieBob, as you may be able to tell from his name, is a movie critic, although not a very good one. However, as you may be able to tell from the title of this video, Bob isn't really known for his movie reviews, and is instead known for his Twitter account. But before we get into that, let's give a bit of background to Bob. Bob has written a book, with it being published on the 1st of July 2013. This book is called Super Mario Bros. 3, Brick by Brick. Now, before I talk more about this book, I really want you to try and think what this book is about. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Super Mario Bros. 3, Brick by Brick is an autobiographical playthrough, talking about himself and his favourite game of all time, Super Mario Bros. 3, which is obviously a weird premise for a book. Firstly, I'll talk about his autobiographical part. Bob reveals that he really loves Mario, and this is because they were both born in the same year and thus grew up with the franchise. He reveals that in school he was a problem child and had to attend therapy for anger issues, and was also prescribed medication such as Ritalin, although he refused this. He also used to carry around a Mario figurine for good luck. After school, he revealed his first job in film criticism, working for a local cable access show, although he was fired for not sharing similar opinions of the film Passion of the Christ. The funniest things Bob reveals about his past is that he moved out of his parents' house at the ripe old age of 31. Although this would not last long, moved into a basement apartment a couple years later, and then presumably moving back in with his mother not long ago. What I, and many others, find to be the funniest thing he revealed about his past is when his grandmother was ill and eventually passed away. Now, this doesn't sound funny at first, but when she was ill, Bob was too preoccupied doing things that truly matter, playing Super Mario Bros. 3. When she did pass away, and the time came for her funeral, Bob again had other urgent pressing matters at hand, which was buying an air conditioner, something which is clearly much more important than attending your own grandmother's funeral. Other things included in his book are just some really stupid statements that I'll quickly read out. He states that Shigeru Miyamoto saved his life numerous times. He compares the console wars in the 90s between Sega and Nintendo to the Vietnam War. He forced himself to enjoy the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Film because it had Mario in it, and that when he was a high school senior, Yoshi's Island broke his brain because it was retconned that Mario and Luigi grew up in the Mushroom Kingdom, not Brooklyn. Let's move away from Bob's book and talk more about Bob's career. Bob worked for the online magazine The Escapist until 2015, until he was fired. Why was this, you may ask? Well, there was a little thing going on the internet around this time. Something small and uncontroversial, you probably wouldn't have heard of it. Gamergate. What a fun and uncontroversial topic, eh? Bob was very defensive of the larger figures of Gamergate, specifically Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian, and because of the staunch defence of these figures on Twitter and The Escapist, he had to be fired. As Gamergate was and still is a dividing topic, Bob's opinions are likely a large source as to why The Escapist lost some ad revenue and was thus let go. However, more recently, he had returned to The Escapist, until the 16th of October 2020, where he was then let go again, which is kind of impressive to be booted out of the same job twice. Got to hand it to him there. After being forced to leave The Escapist, Bob began making content for Screw Attack, and as you should know with lolcows, they do not change. So he continued expressing his views, which Screw Attack did not like, and even had to put a disclaimer, and preferred people didn't even watch Bob's opinions on their own videos. In 2016, there was another event, although this one was a bit bigger, with it being the election of Donald J. Trump to President of the United States of America. Bob uploaded a video and makes it seem like the end of the world, comparing this to Germany in the 30s and the American Civil War.
So that happened. Yeah, like every sane person in the United States, sane person worldwide, I was fucking shell-shocked and horrified and disturbed by the election of a fucking game show host. Like, seriously, even if you put aside, even if you can put aside the racism, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, xenophobia, all the witch's brew of awfulness that is the Donald Trump campaign, even if you put all that aside, he's a reality television game show host. I spent Tuesday night horrified, breaking down, feeling like I wanted to break down myself, and consoling friends who were actually breaking down. In times such as these, there's two conflicting feelings, and there's the one feeling that is the correct feeling, this is correct right up front, is this is not normal, this will not be normal, this must not become normal. We must not let the fact that we elected a racist game show host president of the United States be a normal thing that we're okay with. Good, worthwhile people must resist this and fight it to the best of their ability for as long as they can, for however long it takes to get this son of a bitch out of office, whether it takes, you know, the election in 4 years or sooner by pushing for him to be impeached for one of the fucking awful things he's probably going to do. You have to fight and resist and stay angry and stay involved and stay active, even though your prevailing instinct will be to let things feel normal again and let things settle. And that's one instinct, and that's the noble instinct, but it's also the tiring and exhausting instinct. The other instinct is to try and find a way to live with it and to not let it consume and override your life and say, okay, I'm going to be involved in politics and I'm going to stay mad and angry about this, but I just want to chill out for a little while. I want to forget about this. I want to watch a movie. I want to play a video game. I want to hug my cat or my dog or something. I want to read a funny comic. I want to watch a 5-minute web video where some asshole from Boston talks about the Flash Gordon movie or something. You know, I want to just forget and be. And that instinct is understandable, and that instinct is natural, and it's important to have a pressure release valve. And yet I find myself, and I think probably a lot of people find themselves, torn between those two instincts of I want to stay angry and I want to fight and I want to resist and I want to be, you know, involved and active and not let this go, but I also want to vent and release and calm down and have some escape from it and blow off steam. Good Lord, this probably sounds like such a complete fucking ramble. Where I come down is this. It is important to stay active and engaged and angry and fighting back. I am going to do everything in my power to help the people in communities who will be hurt and affected and oppressed, genuinely oppressed by this monstrous nightmare of an administration that has now been unleashed. Joy is also important, and entertainment is important. Giving people something not to take their minds off of this or give them something to distract them from the fight, but something to give them energy, something to give resolve, an oasis, a small island of joy and entertainment This is usually the part where I'm supposed to say something inspiring. And I don't know if I have any special inspiring thing to say. I don't have a we will not go quietly into the night, we will not vanish without a fight, they may take our lives, they'll never take our freedom. I don't have one of those. This sort of fight is outside of and beyond politics. Politics are an important mechanism of it, but what this really comes down to is what kind of a person are you, and how much do you care about your fellow Americans, your fellow people, the rest of the world. If nothing else, if you've never felt like you had, the opportunity or the time to prove yourself as a person, if you have ever had doubts in what you would do in genuinely troubling times, what would I do if I was a German in the 1930s? What would I do if I was when the killing fields were breaking out? What would I have done at the start of the Civil War? Well, now is your chance for you to find out, to prove what you would have done in such times, because these are such times. This is your moment. This is your time to fight, your time to stand up, and your opportunity to prove what kind of a person you really are. That should scare you. It scares me, but it also excites me. And I hope that it excites you. I hope that it motivates you. I hope that you go out into the world and volunteer and stand up and support your friends, support your allies, support marginalized, imperiled communities. And I, for my part, will be here to entertain you, to give you some moments of solace to grasp onto, hopefully in the midst of this unbelievable horror. And I will also stand with you.
In what he makes out to be a war, he tasks himself to keep the people's morale up so that they can keep fighting against this apparent tyranny. With the selection of Trump in 2016 and his stupidity and anger increasing, a lot more people began to see how much of a lolcow he was and started following him. Whilst having briefly mentioned his political beliefs with Gamergate and hating Trump, I haven't really expanded upon them, and trust me, it's a wild ride. He is a firm believer in a technocratic future, believing in what is essentially sci-fi concepts, and basically envisions a future like the movie WALL-E, which I'm going to be honest, suits him. Bob also has a bit of an authoritarian streak, not really appreciating the democratic process and thinking everyone is an idiot. He also has an infamous quote: "There is no such thing as a bad tactic, only bad targets." Now, this may sound like a quote from a certain funny mustache man, but no, this is from Bob, and I will get onto this more in depth later. Bob is infamous for his love of MCU movies. This would be fine. They aren't awful, despite the fact that they're quite generic. However, MovieBob here is supposed to be a movie critic, and should be able to know that they aren't the greatest, especially not all of them. Bob's love for the MCU films has even made him the subject of a meme a couple years ago, with this being the 38-year-old consumer, which clearly depicts him as well as his major flaws. In late 2019, a man by the name of Jack Allison made a podcast reading Bob's book, Super Mario Bros. 3, Brick by Brick. As you may remember from when I spoke about it before, it has a lot of not so good parts about it, especially not the part where he didn't go to his grandmother's funeral due to him buying an air conditioner. Bob got upset at this, despite just being a true fact, and Jack did very little in the situation. Bob's brother also got upset and responded to Jack too, allegedly without Bob knowing. The unfortunate harassment of Jack got him fired. Haha, no it didn't, it was just Jack messing with Bob and his brother. Bob spoke to Bezizio, aka Jack, although he did not know this, just talking about how he was upset that Jack read the stupid things he wrote and revealed how stupid his book was. Bob's brother is actually worse in this situation, saying that Jack only mocked the book due to a difference in political opinion, and that Jack misrepresented what was in the book when he obviously didn't, as well as saying that this guy needs some help and a lesson in human decency, just because he read some idiot's book. Obviously, in this situation Bob was the victim, despite trying to complain to the company that Jack allegedly worked for, which was all just a simple misunderstanding, as complaining to a company about a worker to a company is all just fun and games. No, Bob was the victim, as Jack read a book that Bob made. As a result of this, Bob's brother made his Twitter account private, which in fairness is a relatively smart move. Although the smarter move would have definitely been to not get involved with something that has very little relevance to you just because your brother wrote a bad book and you wanted to get people fired for working on it. But close enough, I guess. Well, it would have been if he had kept his account private for more than 24 hours. A podcaster on YouTube named EFAP, Every Frame a Pause, caught wind of Bob and obviously made fun of him, calling him Diabito, an alter ego of himself, which is a supervillain. The viewer base of this podcast has also made many memes about Bob. However, in order to make this section not last forever, here is just one. Bob and Lindsay Ellis, previously known as the Nostalgia Chick and even the Hot Dog Girl, became sort of Twitter friends. At one point, Lindsay also stated that he's a very good online personality that she enjoys. At one point, they even met in person, getting us this photo where Bob looks dashing. However, saying Twitter friends is a bit of an exaggeration. The furthest this apparent friendship ever got was Bob replying and retweeting Lindsay's tweets, as well as sometimes atting her. On July 7th, 2020, the user on the Kiwi Farms, named John Spetsnaz, emailed Lindsay, asking her about her associations with Bob. Lindsay then made it thoroughly clear that she does not associate at all with Bob, stating that she doesn't even follow him. Now, before I continue, Lindsay really was not friends with Bob. She replied to a few of his posts years ago, but eventually stopped, although Bob continued to reply and retweeting her, thirsty for her attention. As I stated earlier, she in no way wanted to be associated with Bob, and afterwards, like this example from the 5th of November 2020, even started making fun of Bob herself. Bob completely ignored this, and a few days later on the 10th, Lindsay started to tweet about not all of her peers being her friends, and Bob being Bob, well, he assumed he was her friend. And you know what they say about assuming. The next day, Lindsay replied to Bob's tweet, and oh boy, was it not a happy one. She reveals how creepy he is, and how he can't take a hint, and is fed up that he just won't leave her alone. Bob then took this opportunity to do the right thing. Cry that his feelings are hurt. Bob did actually apologise, although makes it out as though they are colleagues when they absolutely are not. They just create content for the same website and have one-sided interactions. But anyway, on the brighter side, he did actually apologise, something that lolcows don't tend to do. This is probably the funniest moment in the MovieBob story, as he was completely blown out of the water, and his awful behaviour was on full show for everyone, and Bob continued to highlight his awful actions. Anyway, I do feel a bit sorry for Lindsay here. I just hope that no other fat, ugly male feminist tries to do this again. I'm sure that won't happen, right? What are the odds? As a reaction to the online walloping delivered to him by Lindsay, he decided to protect his tweets. In addition to this, he lost a few thousand subscribers on YouTube, as well as losing many followers on his Twitter. However, this would not be the last of the Lindsay Ellis saga, as her Twitter account was deactivated in March 2021. And thus, the Bob Mob rose up in support for the heroic, gelatinous blob we know as Bob. Bob surprisingly kept quiet about the situation, and for once, this isn't one of my dumb setups to laugh about him doing something stupid. Now, he didn't do this in the best way, but for Bob, this is a step up. Fun fact, this got another fat gelatinous blob, the Gunt, to reply. So there's a cool lolcow crossover. So, I've chronicled most of the major happenings that have occurred to MovieBob here, but as he spends most of his time on Twitter, averaging around 60 tweets per day, obviously a lot of things do not follow a narrative, so instead, I'll become Bo Blacks for a bit, and just read some of his tweets in little sections because they are funny. The first section I will talk about is Bob and food. Now, the main part of this isn't Bob's weight. Whilst he is quite a rotund fellow, this isn't going to be the main aspect of this section, and instead going to be the offences against humanity which he produces and enjoys. Firstly, we'll look at Bob's mac and cheese that he created, which is mac and cheese with fried chicken meat, and looks like a mess with mould in it. For some reason, Bob really likes mixing Mountain Dew with food, and has done this at least twice and announced it all to Twitter, as if people would agree that this is gourmet. But no, they just look sad, and I'm no chef, but I'm pretty sure these wouldn't taste nice. I just don't understand why you do this. Another stupid idea for food he has had is peanut butter in place of mayonnaise on a cheeseburger. There's nothing I can really add to that. Ugh. The most infamous food tweets of Bob's are his ones replying to those stupid tweets where it's like, oh, you get $1 million for eating all this, would you do it? The first one he did of these, he states that he could have eaten all of this food. Sorry that you can't see it too well, but it's still a lot of food. The more infamous of these is similar. However, what makes this one funnier is that he believes this to be a small amount of McDonald's for one regular sized person. Now by this, I don't know if he means his size person or an actual regular sized person. Bob then made this worse by saying that when he was younger, this would have been a snack. And of course, people again made fun of him for this. As I said previously, Bob is quite an authoritarian person, and his hate goes towards Republicans and white people, and just has some awful opinions in general. With Republicans, Bob continually dehumanises them, stating that they barely qualify as upright walking hominids, and that the middle states are basically empty, which is very insightful of Bob, as well as stating that they are just breathtakingly stupid blobs of carbon, meth and corn, which is again very insightful and very kind. In general, he just thinks they're stupid. With white people, Bob says that white people are privileged, who experience no oppression and deserve no sympathy, despite being a white person himself. He also states that white people in general are obsolete, which, in fairness, is an apt description of himself. So, good job, Bob. Finally, I'll end this section off with a quiz someone made, where the game is to be able to guess whether a quote is from Bob or the followers of the funny mustache man. Now, honestly, I did not do too well at this quiz, only getting 295 out of 500. But I'll put the link in the description and see if you can do better. Or not. I don't really care, it's just a bit of fun. So the rest of the tweets I'm going to highlight don't really fall into any category. They just show off the peculiarities of Bob. The first one of these is Bob stating that many politicians in Middle America aren't attractive, and states that whilst he is no prize pig himself, pig being the highlight of the sentence, he tries to state that he is more attractive. Now, I know very little about male attractiveness, but I don't think Bob would be that attractive. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but bald fat men aren't that good looking, are they? The next tweet is brief and is a retweet, but it is Bob supporting child abuse, all because the hypothetical child is a Republican. Good optics, Bob. This next tweet is another short one, replying to a tweet asking about Bob's relationship status. How to put this to daytime Twitter. I don't show up to the cookout with anybody, but I seldom end up making my own plate. Whilst this metaphorical statement isn't the best, the funniest part about this tweet is apparently Bob fucks. However, there's been absolutely no evidence to this, and as spoken about before, women tend to be repulsed by him, so take what you will from that, but I will say that many people believe him to be a virgin, and I'll be honest, that isn't a stretch of the imagination. In this next tweet, Bob states that he is smarter than the President Donald Trump, as well as many Democrats, as well as a couple members of Parliament, and that should scare us. Bob is not completely wrong in this statement, as if this statement was true, it would be very, very scary. Although, it is absolutely not true because Bob is a total and complete idiot. Another quick one. Bob encourages violence against Mike Pence, and reasons that he looks like an X-Men villain, which is probably the nerdiest justification of violence possible. Bob also believes that people hate him because they ain't him, which I do not understand how his ego is that big he can justify that to himself. Everybody hates him, why would you want to be him? He is literally, and I mean literally, nothing going for him. The fact he tweeted this twice just shows off his enormous belly, I mean ego. The final one of Bob's uncategorizable tweets is honestly quite a forgettable one, but it's one that I find really funny and surprisingly, at least in my research, isn't spoken about too much. It is that Bob kept, and maybe does still keep thinking about it, cans in his basement apartment, keeping them and stacking them. And think about it. What typically happens when you have a tall, weak structure? It collapses. And with his cans, they all fell down, making a mess in his apartment, making him evidently very sad, as seen by the sad face. So, recently, there has been quite a divisive court issue in America, the Kyle Rittenhouse case. You already know where I'm going with this, so I'm just going to cut right to it. Of course, Bob has a bad take, calling him a brat, whining if he is acquitted, and stating that he is tied to racist groups. Just like always, he was made fun of. When Kyle was acquitted, he again called him a brat, and again attacks Republicans and moderate Democrats, saying that Kyle is a symptom of white trash America. You know, for the horrendous crime of defending himself. Although saying this just doesn't really matter, it's clear Bob's brain is devoid of logic. This last piece of evidence was just to show that Bob will not change, and will keep spouting his stupidity all over Twitter. Now, this isn't really a surprise when it comes to lolcows. However, before I finish this video, I just wanted to speak about one last thing, and that is, at least in the early days of following Bob, around 2015 to 2018, people got incredibly angry at Bob and had the urge to A-log him. So, I just wanted to know if anybody does feel like this, why? I mean, I know Bob is a massive and absolute cockhead, but I just don't feel any animosity toward him. I just see him as an idiot, and it's not really like he has a base to spread his opinions, as everybody hates him. So, if anybody can give me insight whatsoever, that'd be pretty nice to know. Also, with EFAP and Kiwi Farms, quite a community has gathered around Bob, and if you decide to look at the majority of the pages on the Kiwi Farms as I did, you'll see many familiar names, as it's quite a close-knit group, all managing to be smarter than Bob, who is supposedly internet famous. Although, that's not quite true, is it? As he's clearly internet infamous.